boys and girls. Every week, I tell you that this week I'm going to keep it under a minute. We all know that's a lie. And this week, I'm not even going to try that because I know this one's going to go long. So bear with me. I've been asked a few times to talk about how to recover from, fatal mistakes, the horrible things that we all do, saying the wrong name, playing the wrong song, the music stops, all that sort of stuff. That's probably a 2-day workshop to scratch the surface. So I certainly can't do it in a minute or even in a Randy Bartlett minute, but I'm going to try to give you a few tips today that might be helpful. So let's dig right in. The first thing to make this work really well is to set the expectations correctly with your client at your meeting. So what I mean by that is you can't go telling people that they're going to have this perfect event. Forget your part of it. There's no way you're going to put together an event, certainly a wedding for 150 people, and have everything be perfect, right? Something's going to happen to keep it from being perfect. So set that expectations with your client and talk to them about that. In addition to that, talk to them specifically about the expectations for what you can do. And so, one of the things that I would set this up in my planning with my clients, and I would say things like, listen, something's going to go wrong at your wedding. You understand that, right? And occasionally you'd get the client who would go, I hope not. And so you got to get rid of that thought because it's not possible for everything to be perfect. It's like asking a baseball pitcher to never throw a ball, right? They're not going to all be strikes. So, and I cover things just as an example. I would always talk about getting a name wrong. And I was like, I hear these stories of like, oh my God, the DJ said the wrong name. And I'm like, yeah, I've done that. I probably will do it again. But the reality is this, and I always use this example with my clients. Look, you have brothers and sisters. Answer is usually yes. If you have brothers and sisters, tell me at some point growing up, did your mom ever call you by the wrong name, right? And especially if they're the babies, like they go through 6 names before they get to your name, right? And they would go, yeah. And I go, okay, look, you can't hold me to a higher standard than your mom. Like we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all stumble over words. I'm a professional speaker. I'm pretty good at this. But, watch the evening news any night. They make mistakes and they're reading off a teleprompter. I'm doing it all live without that. I'm not going to mispronounce your name, though, right? To me, the big mistake is saying Desiree instead of, what's the other way they even say Desiree? Now I'm messing that one up. There are different ways to say women's names, right? That might have been a bad choice. Andrea, right? So Leah, that sort of stuff. But I'm not going to say it wrong. But I might call you by your sister's name or the maid of honor's name at some point. If I do, by all means, yell at me. It's like, no, I'm not Debbie, I'm Leah. And I'll fix that. So it won't be for lack of effort. I mean, to me, mispronunciation is lack of effort. So I would set those expectations, and not just for me and not just for their name, but for everything. It's like, listen, things can happen. Power might go out. You might be out there doing your first dance, and then the music starts to skip. Things happen. We use the very best equipment that we can, but it's all made right here on Earth. Sometimes a microphone dies. It's not very frequent, but it happens. And we'll be ready with backup, and we'll get through that moment. So that's the first thing. The next thing for you is you have to be prepared for the things that will go wrong. I learned this lesson years ago from Todd Mitchum, who really got it into my head that, like, we know at some point the power is going to go out at an event. We know at some point somebody's going to fall and get hurt on the dance floor. We know at some point the best man is going to do an inappropriate toast. Like, we know these things are going to happen. The music's going to skip. You're going to play the wrong song. You're going to say the wrong name. So you should have several different things prepared for that. You should rehearse and prep so that when things go wrong, you're ready for it. When we were running our company, we would come up with these scenarios and then do 3 or 4 or 5 different possible solutions that you could do in that moment, ranging from being funny to ignoring it to sincere apologies. Like, there's all kinds of different things. I think probably the most important part of this is whatever you do, you have to be very confident, not cocky. You can't just blow it off. Like, one of my pet peeves in the world is when you call somebody on something, it's like, you said you were going to call me back, but you didn't. And then they don't bother to just say, oh, I'm sorry, I should have done that. But they move on. They just go on as if it never happened. In fact, I just fired a contractor over that very issue. He lost a $3,500 job just because got tired of them not acknowledging when they dropped the ball, which was, enough times. They'd still have the job if they would have just, acknowledged it. So be confident, don't be cocky, and never surprised or flustered. There was a football game yesterday that was such a cool thing. My 49ers actually won a game finally. There was a play where the center didn't snap the ball. The 49ers were on the goal line, and the center didn't snap the ball when he was supposed to. There was a man in motion, and our quarterback, Garoppolo, had to stop the man in motion before he got there because it was supposed to be a little forward lateral pass. Forward lateral is oxymoron. Anyway, a little pass to him, a shovel pass. But he got messed up. So he stopped him. Garoppolo took the snap, and then he just ran the ball himself where the blocking was going to be. Like, he already knew where the blocking was for this play, and he went in for a touchdown. At the time, everybody just cheered, yay, touchdown. Well, it was in Chicago, so not everybody cheered there, but 49ers fans cheered. But then when you analyze the play, you're like, wow, that was a pretty big mistake. But instead of him getting flustered, he went with it. There was a really great interview that a friend of mine, Tony Wynyard, posted from England, and it was from Miles Davis, and he talked about when he was painting, much like with music, he said, what do you do when you get the wrong brush stroke? And Miles Davis said, it's never a mistake until you put down the next stroke, right? It's never a mistake when you play the wrong note until you play the next note. And so you can cover these things pretty well, was his point. So never let them see you sweat. I don't care. I mean, everything has ever happened. We did 5,000 events, right? I saw it all. But you're calm, cool, and collected. And even when things are really bad, you're never going to be the one that panics. So that becomes really important. And then finally, you have to sort of decide, am I going to deal with this seriously or with humor? Or sometimes you do ignore mistakes. There's a lot of mistakes. You've ever heard like a concert pianist play, and then they're just like blow you away. They're amazing. And then afterwards, if you know the person, like, oh, I can't believe I messed up. And people are like, what? I have no idea. Or, a painter, same thing, the Miles Davis thing, right? They paint this amazing thing, and then they go, look at this. I'm doing all these home improvement projects now, and I see these mistakes that I've made. And when I point them out to somebody, look what I did, how I screwed this up. They're like, I would have never noticed that if you didn't tell me. So you have to decide if this is really something that needs to be addressed. And then if so, how? So do you address it or not? Let's start with that. And the answer is, it depends, right? There's no way to give you a specific answer to that. It depends on how serious it was, who the client was, what your personality is, what part of the reception you were in. All those things are a really big part of it. Sometimes it can't be avoided. So I've told this story before. And it's funny, I'm watching the World Series and the name Schlumberger was posted on the wall. One of the sponsors was, I don't even know what it was, but it said Schlumberger, and it brought back this horrible memory. So I'm doing a very high-end wedding. It's a client I had worked for before. I knew the parents very well. I knew the bride and groom well. I had worked for this family before. Very high-end Bay Area wedding. And I step up, and I'm actually behind the microphone doing the introductions, which is a little different than normal. In most cases, I was out in the middle of the room, but the setup of this was I was sort of in a corner side of the room, and I'm introducing the parents before the wedding party, and I'm just introducing them at their table, right? So it's just going to be a little Queen's Wave kind of a thing. And the name is Steve and Kim Schlumberger. I got no problem saying the name, except that I couldn't. When I went to say the name, I did my normal welcome, and we got a round of applause. And I said, and before we bring in the wedding party, I'd like to introduce the parents of the bride, Clem and Sleeve. I could not say Steve and Kim. So in my mind, this went on for, 45 minutes, but in reality, it was probably like what I just did. And then what you see is in the room, these, very upscale, wealthy people sitting there like, oh my God, this guy can't even say their name. And so how are you going to handle that, right? I don't know how you would handle it. I will tell you how I handled it, just to give you a concept of what you can do, because I can use a lot of humor in what I do. So I went, Kim, and I just said, you know what? Hang on just a second. A professional master of ceremonies has just arrived. Let me turn the microphone over to him. And I just took the mic here and I put it in my other hand and I sort of pushed myself aside. And I said, don't worry, I have it. I'd like to introduce Ashley's parents. This is her father, Steve, and her mother, Kim. They are the Schlumbergers. And the place blows up and they go nuts. And it's like, look, we've all stumbled over a word. And so, but I was prepared for that, not specifically that thing, but had several different ideas of what I might do if I ever botched things. That was one of the ones I had prepared for. And it went completely nuts, and it was great. And in fact, some of my biggest mistakes that I've made have been really great, where I've had a client come to me afterwards and go, I loved how you set that whole thing up. And I was like, that was me improvising. And like, oh, I thought you did that whole thing yourself, right? I did a wedding once where during the introductions of the wedding party, the fire alarm began going off. It was in Sacramento it's an annex to our library, and it's pretty common that we get false alarms in there. And when this happens, strobes start going off on the wall and the siren is going, but you can't really hear the siren because I've got the intro music going, but I see it happening. I am in the middle of introducing wedding party. I see the person coming from the library. Fortunately, I had a really good relationship with him. He's coming toward me and he's pointing up. I just smile and nod and give him a thumbs up, and I keep going. Now I speed up my introductions so that I only go for, a few more seconds, right? But I bust through them pretty quick. At this point, it's pretty cool, right? These are going up, and I bring in the bride and groom. I announce them as they come in. Everybody's standing, cheering, going completely nuts. And I normally then turn the microphone over to the bride and groom, but in this case, I didn't. Before we got to that, with that cheering still going, I said something to the effect of, "This marriage is so hot, look up, we've set off the fire alarms." And everybody cheered, and I was like, this is going to be the greatest reception ever. Before we do that, we have actually really set off the fire alarms. And so, I don't know what the bride and groom's name was, Steve and Kim. We're going to have you lead your guests outside. This was years and years ago when people didn't have cameras on their phones. They just had, cameras. And I said, bring your cameras with you. We're going to have a fire truck right out front here in just a couple of minutes, because I've been there before. I know what's going to happen. We're going to take some really great pictures with a bride and groom on a fire truck. So join us outside and we'll come back in here for dinner afterwards. And so the whole thing is great. The bride tells me later, as she's walking out, her mother comes up to her and she goes, "How did you get him to do this? This is awesome." Yeah, Mom, he didn't set off the fire alarm on purpose, right? So it was set off by the caterer. So that was a mistake, not mine, but it was a thing that I needed to cover. Something went wrong. So getting back to the Schlumberger thing, you said the wrong name. Now what do? Well, it just depends, like how badly you butchered the name and what's going on at the time. Generally, if you say the bride's name wrong, somebody will yell at you what the correct name is. I told the story on a minute before when I introduced the wrong bride and groom at a wedding whose family I had worked for many, many, many times. I probably knew at least 50% of the guests there, and not one person corrected me. And I ended up doing that correction later. To save time, I'm not going to tell that story again because I've already told it before. But if it's just if you mean to say Ashley and you say Ashlyn, then you can easily correct that and you say, Ashley, blah, 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 right? So if it's Christina, but you said Christine, you could say Christine, right? Or you could just let it go, because it's happened a million times before, right? So you have to know who your client is and what you're going to do with that. But what you're not going to do is like, oh my God, I've destroyed everything. I've played the wrong first dance, right? And I've done both things. I've played it all the way through and didn't even acknowledge it because I announced the correct wrong song, if that makes sense. I announced the one I played. It just was the wrong song. I mean, it wasn't like bride and groom's fault. It was totally my fault. And I've also started playing the wrong song and quickly fixed it, right? And so you can do that again, humor or seriously. There's different ways that you can do that. I usually worked with a DJ and I was the MC. I was usually not behind the booth. So I've had my DJ make a mistake that I have to cover. And I've made mistakes that my DJ has had to cover. So if you play the wrong song, or you're playing a song and it starts to skip, right? Even MP3s skip, right? Now what? I don't know. I mean, if I'm in the middle of a dance mode and I just get a little ticky, ticky, tick going, I might just, advance the track a couple of seconds, and that probably will fix it. And I probably wouldn't even acknowledge that at all. If I was a solo and that was happening, I was clear across the room, then I'd have to do something very different, and I would prepare for that. So I would have several different options. I'd have a funny one where I would, run over there and pretend to be panicked and say, "Who's messing with my system? I'll kill them," right? Or I might just go over and go, "You leave this thing alone for 10 seconds and it does whatever it wants to do." Or I might just go over there and, press play. I'd have different things for different situations. We've all done this. You got a killer dance floor. For sure if you play this next song, it's just going to crush it. But it doesn't. Instead, it clears the dance floor. Now what do? Again, lots of different options. One is mix out of it early, go into something else, right? Don't say anything, you just go on. I'd say, that's probably most frequently what I would do. But I have all these little cute lines, from over the years. And, how about you play the song and there's only one couple on the dance floor. You don't want to stop it because there's one couple, but you can't keep playing it because there's one couple. So I might say something like, "Okay, everybody on the dance floor now, switch partners." There's only one. Or I might say, looks like especially if there's nobody on the dance floor or just one couple, I might say, "It looks like we do still have room for one more couple on the dance floor." Or I might say, "You guys are very fortunate to know that I brought the super short version of this song with me, and I'm out of there and I'm into the next one." if I'm the MC and I've told my DJ to play this song, or even if I hadn't, he knows, and I'm out away from the booth and it kind of clears the dance floor, then at this point, we're in the dance, we've established rapport with the audience, it's a very different thing. Then I might on the microphone say to my DJ, who chose this song? And my DJ would be smart enough to look at me and goes, you did. And I would go, why would you listen to me? I'm the MC, you're the DJ, play something good. And then he'd put on something he knew would rock, and we'd go from there, right? So we could play with that, and I would take the brunt of that. So there's a lot of different options. You can't just, you can't just say, here's what I'm going to do when there's a mistake. You have to prepare these different things. Have funny. If you're funny, don't try to be funny if you're not. That's just the worst, right? So have some funny things available, have some serious ones available, be prepared to just completely ignore it and move on. Very few of our mistakes are fatal. I mean, usually they're the kind of things where, like, I was trying to mix and I got off beat a little bit and nobody even noticed that I did that. Or, I didn't get my wording quite right on an announcement or something. So you just move on from that. Or you say something as simple like, excuse me, let me try that again. And you go on from there. But the key is, don't get flustered. Don't let them see you sweat. Be prepared for it. Understand that we are a live performance and set the expectations with the client, right? It's not going to be perfect. And so when you get their name wrong, like I've had the father of the bride call the bride the wrong name. I actually had the father of the bride call the groom the bride's previous fiance's name, right? So everything that you can do, but it's like nobody's mad at him. Like, it's a mistake. We all do that sort of stuff. So that, I just noticed I have a leaf in my hood here. I've been outside working in the yard. So that's my leaf. No, not one of you. See, that's a mistake. Nobody even bothered to tell me. Thanks for having my back, guys. I hope that helps you work on this stuff. Prepare yourself. Never let them see you sweat, and you'll get through it. See you next week. Is my minute up? Did I do my minute? I think I'm over.